Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December session in our monthly webinar series. Today's presentation is entitled Work-Life Goal Setting. My name is Eric Steiner, and along with Aaron Griffin, we'll be your host for today's webinar. The presentation today will last approximately 45 to 50 minutes. At the end of that period, we will have time for a question and answer session. You can submit your questions for the Q&A session using either the chat window or the questions window in your webinar user control panel. If you're experiencing a technical issue or have a question not related to the presentation, you can reach out to Aaron or myself using the same chat or question windows. As always, we're behind the scenes making sure everything runs smoothly for you today. Now, before we start the presentation, let me give you some background on today's presenter. Cindy Loughran is Chief Change Champion and Fear Blaster at Cindy Loughran Coaching. She teaches clients the dynamics and processes for transformation so they can stop doing battle with change and become empowered to create happier, healthier, more successful, and more fulfilled lives. A masterful certified professional coach, certified group coach, and an engaging speaker, she is known for her insight, directness, and humor, helping people see the truths about themselves without judgment. Cindy has helped hundreds of corporate leaders, solopreneurs, small business owners, and women in transition move from wishing it to living it. Before Cindy's entrepreneurial spirit took her out of the corporate arena, she spent 9 years in leadership positions in human resource management. Drawing from her passion for developing the full potential in others and her success as an internal corporate partner and advisor, Cindy established her own life coaching and leadership development business in 1986. Recognized as one of Boston's top 10 coaches by Women's Business Boston, Cindy has been a contributor to national trade and business journals and blogs. She does one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and facilitates mastermind groups to help clients get the results they say they want in their lives, their careers, and small businesses. Cindy, I'll go ahead and turn the presentation over to you so we can begin.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. And it is great to be here. Welcome to all of you on the phones and on the webinar. And so let's just dive in because this goal setting thing is a big topic. So I'm calling this presentation or this webinar Goal Setting for Life because we think a lot about goal setting from a business perspective, from a work perspective. It's how we get measured. It's how we work on things together and collaborate. And oftentimes we set goals in our work life, but not in our personal life in as significant a way. And it's important to set goals in all aspects of our lives. And most people that I speak to say that they understand the value of having written goals, but I must say very few of them have them. So in this webinar, you're going to learn to create goals, and you're going to learn an approach to determining what goals to set in all areas of your life. You're going to learn why setting goals is more than just a stressful exercise. You know, most people when they set goals like, ugh. So we're going to see if we can shift that. We're going to learn how to use goals to plan, how to use them as actual living, breathing documents, not just something that we do once a year and put away. I'm going to give you a blueprint for creating effective goals. And we're also going to talk about strategies to increase the likelihood that you'll achieve the goals that you set. To not set goals is to leave your future up to others or to circumstances or chance. And your life is way too important to do that. There are many well-known quotes about setting goals. Some say failing to plan is the same as planning to fail. Yogi Berra said, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up somewhere else. And some of you may recall the wonderful scene from Alice in Wonderland, where Alice is talking to the Cheshire Cat and says, would you tell me, please, which way ought I walk from here? That depends a good deal on where you want to go. Where you want to get to, said the cat. I don't much care where, said Alice. Then it doesn't much matter which way you walk, said the cat. As long as I get somewhere, Alice added as an explanation. Oh, you're sure to do that, said the cat, if you only walk long enough. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't want to leave my life up to chance, and I don't want to have to walk long enough in order to get somewhere and hope I like it when I get there. So, why do we set goals? What's the value? Value, sorry. Goals come in to play when we get serious about wanting to know where we're going and getting there, or getting clear about where we're going and getting there. It's not just an empty exercise that you do once a year and you shove into a drawer. Goals are a living, breathing document that help us by setting, they're a way of setting direction. They help us by giving us an opportunity to create a plan for execution. They guide us to prioritize and manage our time. They help us to make clear choices. They help us measure our progress so we know that we're moving forward in the right direction. They help us recognize success and, in fact, recognize opportunities to redirect our energies. They help us be accountable. And ultimately, they get us where we want to go. So with all of those benefits, what prevents us from setting goals? Here are just a few reasons, and there are many. The first and probably the biggest reason that I hear about from people who don't set goals is this fear of failure. There's a belief I can't fail at what I don't set. If I don't say I'm going to do something and I don't do it, well, maybe I didn't really want it after all. So I didn't really fail. Or at least if I did, I only did it privately. And then there's fear of success. What if I do it and it's not what I really wanted after all? What if I'm successful and I can't sustain it? What if I'm successful and I leave other people behind? I move forward and they don't come with me. Another thing that prevents us from setting goals is a lack of clarity about our priorities. We don't really know what's important to us. So we just keep taking action and doing what's right in front of us, being reactive. Oftentimes we have conflicting wants or needs, and we believe that setting a goal sets us up for an either-or situation. That if we have something, if we move toward our goal, it means we'll give up something else. So, for example, I have clients who in their personal lives have weight loss goals, but they really resist setting goals because they're afraid that to do what they need to do to lose weight means that they'd be deprived of their favorite foods or some of their favorite activities, which is hanging out with people over dinner and drinks. People think that if they set lofty career goals, that it might mean that they're going to have to sacrifice leisure time, or that they might upset their friends because they're leaving them behind. So conflicting wants and needs can create a problem. Lack of time impacts us in two ways. Sometimes we just feel like we don't have time to set aside to think about what we want and how to get there and to set the goals that will get us there. Or we think that setting goals means we have to work harder and we have to do more. And we've already got plates that are way too full. As I mentioned, these are only a few of the reasons that people who I talk to don't set goals. So think about it. Do any of those resonate for you? What is your reason? If you're one who hasn't set goals in the past, why not? Knowing and recognizing what your resistance is or what the roadblocks are to setting goals can help you to take that first step in overcoming those and getting started. So even people who do set goals often miss. So what prevents us from achieving goals? Well, one thing is that they were unrealistic to begin with. They were too big. They were shoulds, not wants. Somebody told us that we should do it, but it's not really what we want. They were too vague. We were trying to do them all alone, or we didn't make time to work on them. So for the rest of this webinar, we're going to talk about, and I'm going to tell you how to overcome this resistance and set goals that work. It doesn't matter if your goal is a personal one or a professional. The same elements are required for success. So you all received, I believe you all received, should have received, a link for a handout, and hopefully you were able to print that out and you have it in front of you. If by any chance you don't have it, you didn't get it, or you didn't have a chance to fill it out, just use a piece of blank paper. You can follow along with the slides and with my instructions. And if you'd like to get it, just put a note in the chat section, and Erin or Eric will send out the link for you to get them. But don't get distracted by that right now, so you can go ahead and follow along with us. So to set goals, the first thing you want to do is start out with a big picture. You want to ask yourself some important questions. And here's some of the questions, and you don't have to answer all of them, but start thinking about what's important to me. How do I want to be remembered? And that might be in your family, in your community, in the world, in your job, in your industry, in your department. What's the legacy you want to leave? What are your company's goals, your organization's goals? What does success look like to me? And what will I regret not having done if at the end of my life I haven't done it? So take a minute and just answer a couple of those questions. And your answers can be very general. I want to be happy. I want to help people. I want to be healthy. I want to be seen as an expert. I want to be successful. I want to sail around the world in a yacht. But what are some of the things that come to mind as you look at some of these questions? Okay, so hopefully you've jotted down just a few notes. And with that big picture in mind, let's take a quick inventory of where you are right now relative to that big picture. So we're going to take a look, and you have this as the second page of your handout. Where do I begin? So here are my lofty wishes and goals. But as you take a look at this wheel, this life wheel, you'll see that it's broken down into 12 sections, and one of them is other. So feel free to add something. If there's something in here that's not important to you, feel free to change it to something else. It's your life. So go ahead and look at the areas that matter to you. And on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is at the center of the circle and 10 is on the outside, at the perimeter, on the outside, the circumference, take a little assessment and plot yourself in each of the areas of your life as to where you are relative to that big picture vision. So if you feel like you're right on track and you're in really good shape, you're a 10. If you feel like really haven't touched that area and it's being neglected, then plot your little point at the 1 toward the center or somewhere in between. And you want to plot the point in the middle of the pie slice along those lines. So you might ask yourself, well, how am I doing in the area of finances as they relate to my big picture? Am I putting enough money away? Do I have financial goals that will move me in the direction? How am I doing in the area of relationships as it relates to my big picture? And health, family, my career. So all of those areas. And if you have any questions about what the areas mean, make it up, because it's up to you. Physical environment might mean your home, it might mean your office. Whatever it means to you that's useful is just fine. So assess where you are relative to your big picture in each of the areas. And so as you can see, what we're doing is we're trying to start with the big picture and then chunk things down so that they're actionable. And when you've done that, on the next page, I want you to take the time, and we'll get started now, but take this away with you, and brainstorm, what are the possibilities? What are the things that you could do, that you might do, that would move you closer to your big picture in each of the areas? So in finance, you might save more money. You might set goals around money. You might work with a financial planner. In health, you might get more fit, start an exercise program, quit smoking, start eating healthier. And again, they may be very specific things, or they may be more general, but specific to the area of life that you're talking about. So jot down a list of the ideas that you come up with in each of the areas. Some of the things will be things that you can do right away, and other things may be things that take more time. It's all fine. It's all part of the grand tapestry that you're weaving called life. So now that you've jotted down a couple of ideas for the rest of the seminar or webinar, I'd like for you to just choose one area that you can work on. And you always want to be careful, mindful, not to set up and start working on too many goals at once. Because if you do too much at once, you're going to become overwhelmed and you'll freeze. You won't do anything. So at this point, you want to decide or identify specific things that you could do to increase your areas, your progress in the different areas. And now we're going to turn those into effective goals. So effective goals are SMART goals. And some of you have probably heard that acronym before. But for those of you who have, it's a reminder. For those of you who haven't, the S stands for specific. So you want your goals to be specific. So rather than lose weight, what specifically do you want to do? What weight do you want to get down to? How many pounds do you want to lose? Specific answers the question, who, what, and how. So I will save more money becomes I will save $2,400 by the end of 2015. Or beginning in January, I will put $200 in my savings account every month. So they're very specific, and they guide you into action. Closely related to specific is that they're measurable. If they're measurable, they're manageable. So can you measure saving $2,400? Sure. Can you even better measure putting $200 in savings every month? Sure, because you know whether you're doing it or you're not. You can measure success. The A is attainable. You want to be sure that the goals that you set for yourself are physically possible. You can't lose 50 pounds in 2 weeks unless you have a magic wand. If you want to double sales in the next quarter and you don't have anything in your pipeline, it probably isn't going to happen. So you want your goals to stretch you. You want to be a little uncomfortable and out of your comfort zone, but you don't want you to set yourself up to fail even before you begin. So let's make sure that your goals are attainable, they're physically possible, that someone with some experience, someone with your resources could do it, even if it's a stretch. The R, results-oriented or relevant. You want to check and make sure that your goal isn't just about activities that'll keep you busy, but that they move you toward a result. And that result in the short goal is relevant to your big picture. So you ask yourself, is this goal moving me toward the bigger picture that's important to me? Or is it just busy work or someone else's want? And if it's not moving you forward, get creative about what you could do differently in order to achieve the desired goals. So remember, goals are not worksheets that you create once and put in a drawer. They're living, breathing documents. And so you want to check them and say, is this still relevant? Is this still significant? Is this still important to me? And adjust if they're not. And the final, the T in SMART, is time-bound. A goal is a dream with a deadline. So be sure that your goal includes a written statement about the time frame by which you'll achieve the goal, the deadline associated with it. By when will you complete what you set out to complete? And once your goal is clear, or goals are clear, you're going to use the goals to create a plan. So if we drill down on each of the goals, we can create a detailed plan of small, manageable steps towards success and create a project plan with it. We want to make sure that we're taking baby steps. Most of us try to take a giant leap rather than taking small steps, and then we get overwhelmed, we freeze, we fail. In many of my live trainings, I ask people to stand up and to take the third step first. So imagine doing that. If you're in a space where you can, go ahead and stand up. and take the third step first. So when I ask people to do that, many of them raise one leg as if to take a step, and they just stand there frozen, not knowing what to do, because they know that whatever they do will be the first step, not the third step. That even if they take a giant leap and go the distance of a third step, it's still only the first step. So they stand there overwhelmed, not quite knowing how to do it, knowing where they want to get to, but not what the first step is. Or they take this giant leap to where they want to go and they can't make it because it's too long a stretch. So you want to break down your goals into smaller goals and manageable milestones. What do I need to do by when? And make those into goals. And again, SMART goals. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, or relevant and results-oriented, and time framed. And then you want to consider, what resources will I need in order to accomplish the goal? Do I need to buy equipment? Do I need to learn a new skill? Do I need to find a mentor or a coach? Do I need materials? And for most of us, we think that considering the resources isn't part of accomplishing the goal. It is. Planning is a big part of acting on a goal. So we need to give ourselves credit and time for doing that part of the goal setting. Every step that you take is a step towards your desired outcome. Then you want to consider, what support will you need, and create a plan to get it. So you may need your boss's support if you are looking for a promotion. You may need a spouse or partner's support if you want to go back to school and take a class, or build time in to go to the gym, or change how you manage your finances. So think about, what support do you need to move forward, and how are you going to get it? And again, that's a step in the goal. Then create the plan and keep it visible. All of the things that we've talked about so far need to be written down. Your goals should be written. Your plans should be written. You'll have a to-do list. You'll build your to-do list into your calendar. So all of a sudden, what was this very lofty dream has now become a manageable, concrete, actionable way to live day to day. And keep that project plan visible. So here are a few more tips. When you're writing goals, make sure they're powerful language. You're using powerful, concise language that motivates you. You want to use positive language that moves you toward, not away from something. So you want to be more successful rather than less stuck, get unstuck. You want to have, you want to get promoted instead of staying in my current job. You want to eat more healthily, more healthy foods than stay overweight, get I'm giving a very bad example here. You want to move toward rather than away from. So very often people will say, well, I want to be less tired. And you want that to be, I want to have more energy. I want to feel more fit. Avoid words like try. I'm going to try to get in shape. I'm going to attempt to improve my finances. I plan to. All three of those soften your intent. Be willing to falter, but take a stand. So plan to. Well, it's great to plan to do something, but I want you to take a stand for your intention to do it. I will. I will improve my financial situation. I will save money. I will lose weight. I will get promoted. I will improve my sales. And that fourth thing there, avoid the shoulds. Because if you're shoulding, then you're doing it for someone else, and it's far less motivating. I want, I will, I am, all powerful words. So you want to incorporate those things in. And there may be some questions about those in the Q&A. I'm happy to answer those. I talked about this before. Set goals that move you toward something rather than away from something. Avoid negative language such as fewer or less. So if you're doing less of something, what are you doing more of? Eating less junk food. I'm eating more healthy food. I'm spending less money on superfluous things. I'm being more mindful of how I spend my money. I'm creating a budget and sticking to it. Celebrate the successes, even the small ones. So many of us wait to celebrate until we've gotten to the goal line. Imagine if you were running a marathon. If you didn't acknowledge yourself for steps along the way, for milestones along the way, for even getting to the starting line. Acknowledging successes helps keep you motivated. It helps you acknowledge your successes, your strengths, your commitment. It energizes you. So it's really important to notice the milestones and celebrate them. Give yourself a treat. Give yourself a reward. And finally, you're going to increase your likelihood of success if you go public and get support. Many of us aren't very good at honoring our promises to ourselves. We're kind of out of integrity with ourselves. We're far more likely to put our wants and needs aside to honor the needs of others. And as a result, we really are out of integrity. And then we feel badly that we didn't do for ourselves what we said we would do. And we get resentful toward other people because we've honored them. We've chosen to honor them before we honored ourselves. And so by going public, we're more compelled to act on our intentions when other people know about it. And we can also get support and assistance and advice or information from people. Now, that being said about going public, you want to be careful who you go public with. You want to share your goals with people who will support you. And be careful not to share them with people who actually have a vested interest in you staying just the way you are. So if you have a colleague at work who loves sharing an office with you, loves being able to gossip at the water cooler with you, they may not be, although they say they support you, they may sort of have a little agenda that wants you to stay right where you are, not leave them behind. If you have a number of friends who are smokers and your social life is around going outside a few times a day and standing around and keeping them company smoking, they may say they want to help you quit smoking, but there's something in it for them to keep you right where you are. So just be careful when you're asking for support from people, when you're going public with people, that they're people who are really have a vested interest in your being successful and no hidden agenda. And I don't think people are evil, but I do think that subliminally we tend to support things that serve us as well. So how does going public help you? Or what ways can you use to go public? So one is by finding an accountability buddy, someone who might share the goal with you, someone else who wants to get ahead, someone else who wants to lose weight or quit smoking, somebody else who wants to get into financial shape. You know, we're much more apt to go to the gym if we know there's somebody there waiting for us. We're much more apt to go for a walk at lunchtime if we know we've got somebody to go with. A friend. Again, we talked about being careful about friends, but telling your friends and asking your friends to hold you accountable, to join with you, to encourage you, to be your cheerleader. Join a mastermind group or create one. A mastermind group is a group of people who don't necessarily work in the same industry or have the same exact goals, but are working toward goals and are willing to share ideas, give advice, support to other people along their journey. So they might meet every month and sort of check in, share what they're up to, share their successes, get advice about where they may not have done well. Mastermind groups can be made up of all kinds of diverse groups of people brought together. And I know I have been in many of them, and it's a great way to get accountability, support, ideas. A support group. People are in a similar situation to you that can all rally around to help you move forward. Or use a coach, someone outside of you who is committed to your success but isn't going to necessarily is going to help you overcome the limiting beliefs, the stories, the history that's keeping you stuck. So, with all of that in mind, what will you do next? What we've talked about so far is how goals can provide a roadmap so that you can get where you want to go. We've looked at a way to determine what goals to set by starting with a big picture. You've looked at the value of setting goals to help you plan, be accountable, take baby steps, keep you on track. And we've looked at a way to break down goals from the big lofty to the step-by-step to-do lists, putting it in your calendar, visiting it periodically to check in. We've talked about the SMART blueprint for creating effective goals. And we've looked at a number of tools to increase the likeliness of achieving your goals. So before I move on, I just want you to take a look at where you are in your life, in all areas of your life, and identify places you want to move forward. And use goals a little bit as a game. They're serious business, but what they do is give you some structure to help you win at the game. So I hope you'll use these skills, use these tools, use each other if you are on this webinar with coworkers or friends, and move forward so you end up where you want to be. And with that, I want to thank you, and I suspect that there may be questions, comments, and so Eric, you want to tell people what they can do to ask those questions, and we'll see what we can come up with.
Yeah, absolutely, Cindy. And thank you very much for the presentation today. It certainly was very informative for me. I believe everyone can agree. Learning how to set goals and manage the process of achieving those goals is extremely important to success both at home and at work. And we have reached our question and answer session of the presentation for today. So again, if you have a question you'd like to ask Cindy, you can submit it through the questions panel available in your user control panel. We've got a number of questions that have already come in during the presentation today. So Cindy, we'll go ahead and start with this one here. What is a good way to evaluate one goal over another when one has to be somewhat sacrificed for the improvement of another?
When one has to be sacrificed for the improvement of another. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but let me see if I can give, because prioritizing is important. And so there are a couple of things that are important to look at, is really to say, where does this fall in terms of what's important to me? How important is it? We need to set priorities. We will always have too much to do than there are hours in the day. So one is setting priorities and saying which is most important. And the other is assuming that you can have both, but maybe not both at once. So the priority thing tells you what to do first. The other is to say maybe you can do both, but have it stretch out a little longer. Or take a really little baby step in one area. And that's the beauty of breaking down goals into baby steps, is that literally there are times when I consider it a win if I need to reach out to someone and I don't know how to reach them initially, that I may set a goal for a day to just get their contact information. That's one step closer to being able to reach out to get them. So that's what I mean when I say chunking things down into just tiny bite-sized pieces, because that allows us to be working on multiple things at once. So that's the long answer to prioritize and chunk things down.
And Cindy, we've actually had some clarification on that question come through. In regards to the current question, an example of going back to school would decrease my amount of family time. So prioritizing the goals, to go back to the original question of what is a good way to evaluate one goal over another when one has to be somewhat sacrificed for the improvement of the other? For instance, maybe spending more time with family versus going back to school and perhaps being able to earn more money for the family.
Okay. You know, those are all those are just perfect questions to ask. So asking that question and looking at what are all of the different ways I could make this work. So often, and we think it's the only way. So maybe you go to school part-time. Maybe you decide that and you negotiate. It's again looking back at the support. Who do you need support from? And in this particular case, you may need support from family that says, I'm going to, for the next year or whatever it is, going to go back to school. And that's going to mean that I'm not going to be as available. And here's why I'm doing it. So go public with your reasons, and that what I commit to, what I promise is that to make up for the time that I have to miss with my family to do this other thing for my family, every Saturday or every whatever, we're going to have a big adventure. We're going to have a family adventure. So you set goals to counterbalance what you feel like you're giving up. Remember, we're going to go back to the saying, it's quantity. It's quality, not quantity. But that's the going public, getting support, brainstorming different ways of doing it, different ideas. I know people who have, if you have young children, while you're sitting down to do your homework, they're sitting next to them and doing their homework. It's family time. You're just doing your own thing. So there's lots and lots of ways to have it be an and as opposed to an or. And I hope that's helpful. And if it's not, and you want, if you want more clarification, you can see on the screen my email address is there. So if you want to send me an email personally, we can have a little exchange on email. I'm happy to do that.
And great, Cindy, we've got another question here. How can you start the goal? How can we get the motivation to start the goal? An example would be start an exercise and eat right. So you've identified the goal, but where does really the energy and the momentum behind achieving that goal come from?
So if you don't have if it doesn't come with its own, it's a should. You think you should. Someone else said you should. So the motivation comes from it being a want. So the question to ask to get to the want, to get to the motivation is, why is that important to me? And why is that important to me? And why is that important to me? So as an example, why is it important to you to be fit? Well, I'll have more energy. So why is that important to you? Well, I'll be able to spend more time with my kids doing fun things that they like to do. Oh, okay. That's getting a little motivating. Why is that important to you? Well, I love being with my kids and I want to set a great example for them. That ought to be getting a little more motivating. So the more we can understand our own personal why we're doing something, the more motivating it'll be. As long as it's a should, it's just not going to happen. Or it's very unlikely it's going to happen. Why do I want to go back to school and give up the time that I had? Going back to that last question. Well, because it'll be interesting for me and it'll allow me to contribute more. Well, why is that important? Because I love my family and I want to be able to make more money and contribute more to my family and provide my family things that are important. That's kind of motivating.
Great, Cindy. We have one more. How to set priorities when all areas are important? How do you really figure out which priority you want to attack first?
So I think that all of our priorities are connected like on a string. So if you up your game in one area, it will up your game in all areas. So if they really feel as if they're pretty equal, just start. Just start somewhere. If you can say, well, what will give me the biggest bang for my buck? What'll make the biggest difference? Start there. Some people say, what will be, for the first one, what will be the easiest one? Because we like to have early wins and successes to build our confidence. So there are lots of different ways to prioritize, but if they're really that equal, just choose. Just get started. Just get the energy going. It's all good.
All right, Sydney, I think we have time for a couple more today. My husband and I both set goals for ourselves, but they are very different. How can we work on setting some goals we can achieve together?
What a great question, and what a great time of year to ask that. Because I think it's a wonderful thing for couples and families to sit down at the beginning of the year and say, what do we want to accomplish next year? What do we want to do? What goals do we want to set as a couple and as individuals? And so, again, I would say the same thing. You start back with the same thing. What are our lofty goals? And do it together and have a conversation. What's important to us? What do we want to create together for 2015? And what do I want to do separately? And you do your own exercise and you come together and have a conversation. And when you get to the what is it going to take, what are the resources, what's the support I need, that's when you get into a negotiation about, well, for me that means that I need to have Mondays to take this class. So if you're a parent, it's a matter of negotiating. Can you make sure you're always home on Monday nights? Or can we get a sitter for Monday nights? Or can you handle making dinner for Monday? Whatever it might be, I'll do this on Wednesday nights because that's what's important for you. Or what do we have to do together? How do we create, around finances and money? What do we do together? So it's a wonderful, just take the same exercise and do it as a team. Do it with your family. Do it separately. Come together. It's all about the conversation. But these are all tools that will help you get to the conversation, to the table to have the conversation. And I so encourage it. And not just this time of year, any time of year. It just happens that it's just always a good time of year to be sort of taking stock of where you've been and where you're going.
All right, Sydney, I think we've got time for just one more today, and I think this would be a great one to close on. I feel like some of my goals aren't attainable, rather just wishful thinking. Is that okay or detrimental?
I think you know the answer to that question, whoever asked it. It's okay, but it's probably not true. They're not attainable tomorrow. So again, break it down into what's it going to take to get there? What are some baby steps? What would move you in the right direction? Sometimes it's helpful, and a lot of times when I'm coaching clients, we look at, well, what is it that makes you say it's not attainable? Because oftentimes what we think isn't attainable is just our own negative self-talk, it's self-doubt. It's thinking that there's only one road to where we want to go, and there may be many. And if you don't know that there's a shortcut, or you don't know that there's another route, you think you can't get there. So that's when using a mastermind group, a support group, a coach is really useful to look at getting creative about how you get over the barriers that you imagine or believe are there. So I say, get started. Don't let the thought that you can't stop you. And again, I always say to people, if I have a goal, I'm 5'1", and if my goal is to be 5'8", unless I get really, really big shoes, it's not going to happen. And I don't choose to do that because it would be really dangerous. So, if it's physically impossible, then you sort of have to give it up and look at what you wanted it in the first place. But other than that, I think most things are attainable over time.
Well, great, Cindy. I definitely think we had some great answers today, some terrific questions for today's presentation.
Yeah,
And as we come to the end, is there anything else you would like to say as we close out today?
I'm going to leave you with Henry Ford's statement. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. So setting goals that move you in the direction that you want to go, in language that speaks to I can, and with an attitude and a plan that gets you toward I can, is a they're powerful tools, goals. So give it a shot. Give it a try. So you don't end up someplace else.
That's some great advice, Cindy. We certainly something we can take to heart as we leave the session today. I would like to thank everyone for coming out and joining us today for our wonderful presentation on work-life goal setting. And again, I want to thank Cindy Loughran for being our delightful and just absolutely brilliant presenter today, for making this such an enjoyable presentation to attend. And again, if you have any questions, please let us know after the presentation. And Cindy's contact information is available here as well if you'd like to reach out to her for some additional assistance or something like that related to perhaps some future need you have in your life. But with that, we'd like to go ahead and end today's session. We thank you for joining us, and hope to see you next month when we begin our 2015 presentation series.